Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're going kind of deep into philosophy and personality.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about Arthur Schopenhauer.
Always a good time.
Always a good time. He's a very interesting figure.
Yeah, he is.
And we're going to be looking at him through the lens of the Enneagram,
Okay.
specifically the sexual force subtype.
All right. Yeah, that's it's going to be interesting to see how that lines up.
I think so. And, I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
We have some really interesting source material that I think
Yeah.
is going to give us some pretty fascinating insights into Schopenhauer.
Okay.
So for our listeners who are already familiar with the Enneagram,
Yeah.
we're going to kind of skip the basics here
Right, thanks, Sarah.
and go right into the sexual four.
Yeah.
So maybe we could start with you giving us a little bit of a rundown on
Sure.
the sexual four, sometimes called the competitive four.
Yeah. So the sexual four, or the competitive four, as you said, is kind of characterized by this deep longing for authenticity
Mm-hmm.
and a drive to be seen as unique and special.
Yeah.
They kind of have this feeling that something's missing inside.
Interesting.
And that kind of fuels a desire to stand out, prove their worth, you know?
And I think that's where it gets interesting because Schopenhauer, right, his philosophy can be pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But it seems to really echo this feeling of
Right.
longing and lack.
Exactly. Yeah. Schopenhauer's not exactly, light reading,
Yeah.
but he's profoundly insightful. And I think he really embodies this core struggle
Yeah.
of the sexual four, like this yearning for something more, this feeling that fulfillment is always just out of reach.
Always just out of reach. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
But would you say there's like a certain beauty in that struggle?
Oh, absolutely.
Because he doesn't shy away from the darkness.
All right. I mean, he embraces it.
He embraces it.
Explores it.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think he finds meaning in it,
Yeah.
you know?
And this seems to connect with, what you were saying about this
Yeah.
need for creative expression.
Yeah.
For the sexual four.
It's like a lifeline,
Yeah.
It's a way to process their inner turmoil,
Yeah.
make sense of their experiences, connect with something larger.
So we're already seeing how Schopenhauer's philosophy
Yeah.
and the characteristics of the sexual four are kind of starting to intertwine.
Exactly.
But let's talk about his life.
Sure.
Specifically,
Yeah.
his rivalry with Hegel. I mean, this is like classic
Oh, yeah.
sexual four competitive drive.
Yeah, and it went beyond just an intellectual debate,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he saw Hegel's work as superficial,
Right.
pretentious,
Totally.
and this fueled his drive to create a philosophical legacy of his own.
His own. Yeah, but there's also this need for recognition, which seems almost paradoxical because he craved this validation
Right.
from the academic establishment.
Yeah.
But he also rejected their ideas, right?
Right.
And then he scheduled his lectures
Oh, yeah.
at the same time as Hegel,
Which kind of backfired.
which really backfired.
Yeah.
Limited his audience.
That's that push and pull, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to belong,
Yeah.
but needing to stand apart.
So almost like self-sabotaging in a way.
In a way, yeah.
It is fascinating. And then to make it even more kind of
Yeah.
ironic,
Right?
he didn't achieve widespread recognition until after his death,
Right. Exactly.
which kind of makes you wonder,
Would it have even mattered at that point?
yeah, would it have even
Yeah.
satisfied him?
Right.
Yeah, so we're seeing, this need to be seen as special, this disdain
Mm-hmm.
for mediocrity, the tendency to compare himself to others.
Yeah, and these aren't just superficial quirks,
Yeah.
This is ingrained in the sexual four's personality.
It's almost like his philosophy is just an extension of his
It is.
personality.
Yeah, it
Re-
really speaks to the power of the Enneagram as
Yeah.
a tool,
It really is fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about his personal life,
Okay.
specifically his family dynamics
Yeah.
and how that might have contributed to his worldview.
Well, his relationship with his mother was notoriously difficult.
Okay.
She was a socialite,
Mm-hmm.
very outgoing, vivacious.
Yeah.
And Schopenhauer was introspective and melancholic.
Yeah.
So, this fundamental difference, I think, contributed to his sense of alienation.
Yeah. So even from an early age,
Yeah.
he's dealing with this sense of not quite fitting in,
Yeah,
being different.
exactly.
And then his father suspected suicide.
That had to have a profound impact.
That must have been a huge impact on him.
Yeah.
So he's dealing with all this.
Yeah, and, it's like he internalized this tragedy and loss, and that just kind of permeated his philosophical ideas.
I mean, it is interesting because on the one hand, it can feel really bleak.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, it speaks to this
It does.
sensitivity,
It does, yeah.
this awareness of the human condition.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that the Enneagram doesn't dictate our fate.
Right.
It just gives us a framework
Yeah.
to understand our patterns.
Right. So it's not to say, oh, he was a sexual 4, so he was doomed
right.
to be lonely.
Exactly.
It's more like, okay, how did
Yeah.
this personality
Yeah, how did this differ?
contribute to his struggle?
To his struggles, and
Yeah.
then how did that influence
And then
his work?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to stop for now.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
We'll continue this conversation in the next segment.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right. So, welcome back to our deep dive into Schopenhauer and the sexual 4.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I kind of want to go back to what you're saying about Schopenhauer's, his ability to see and acknowledge pain.
You mean like his willingness to kind of confront the darker aspects of life?
Yeah, precisely. And it's not that he enjoyed suffering,
Right.
but I think he recognized it as, kind of an inherent part of the human experience.
Okay.
And this aligns with the sexual 4's tendency to kind of lean into those emotions,
Yeah.
even the painful ones,
Yep.
rather than trying to suppress them or avoid them.
I see. So it's not about seeking out suffering.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that it's there
Yeah.
and trying to find meaning.
Exactly, yeah. And this also ties into his belief that art, especially music,
Mm-hmm.
could provide a temporary escape from that cycle of
Yeah.
desire and suffering.
Okay.
Do you see how that kind of connects back to the sexual 4?
I think so. I mean, for the sexual 4, creative expression can be a way to process those intense emotions,
Yeah.
to find solace and beauty
Right. Yeah.
in a world that can often feel overwhelming.
Exactly.
It's like they're saying, yeah, even amidst the darkness, I can create something
Yeah.
beautiful and meaningful.
Now, let's go back to Schopenhauer's relationships for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned that he had, the difficulties connecting with others.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile that with the sexual 4's desire for authentic connection?
Well, it seems paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, they crave intimacy, but they often struggle to maintain it.
It is a paradox, and I think it stems from the sexual 4's intense need to be seen as unique and special. You know,
Yeah.
they're afraid of being misunderstood or losing themselves in a relationship.
Yeah, so they're holding back, even though they want that closeness.
Right, exactly. And I think that makes sense, especially when you consider his difficult relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
It's almost like that early experience really shaped his view of connection as something potentially threatening.
Yeah.
And his own romantic life seems to mirror that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
He never married. And he had some pretty cynical views about women.
Right.
And this could, suggest some unresolved frustrations, failed attempts to find that deep connection that he craved.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost tragic in a way.
It is.
Yeah. He spent his whole life kind of exploring the nature of desire and suffering,
Yeah.
yet he couldn't find lasting fulfillment in his own relationships.
Well, it's important to remember, that the Enneagram,
Right.
it's not deterministic. It's not,
Right.
Saying that this is your fate.
Right, it's not a crystal ball.
Yeah, it's just a framework.
A framework for understanding our patterns.
Exactly.
So it's not to say that because he was a sexual 4 that he
Yeah.
was doomed to be lonely.
Exactly. It's more about how did, these tendencies
contribute.
Yeah, contribute to his struggles.
To his struggles, exactly.
And then how did those struggles, in turn,
right.
influence his work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now that brings us back to his rivalry with Hegel.
Yeah.
Earlier we were talking about how Schopenhauer deliberately scheduled his lectures at the same time as Hegel's.
Yeah, it was a bold move.
It was a bold move.
For sure.
And it speaks to, the sexual 4's willingness to go against the grain.
Yeah.
Even if it means sacrificing recognition or success.
Yeah. But wasn't it also a little
It was.
self-sabotaging?
It was.
I mean, if he really wanted to gain a wider audience,
Right.
why compete
Yeah.
directly with the most popular philosopher of the time?
Well, that's where that competitive drive of the sexual 4
Yeah.
can be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
They have this intense desire to prove their worth,
Yeah.
to be seen as superior,
Yeah.
but that can lead to some self-defeating behaviors. So it's like they're so focused on being better than everyone else
Right.
that they miss out on opportunities
Yeah.
to connect with others.
Or to gain recognition on their own terms.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And I think it highlights the importance of self-awareness for the sexual four.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
By recognizing their own patterns
Yeah.
and motivations, they can learn to kind of channel that energy in a more constructive way.
Right. So instead of seeing every interaction as a competition,
Right.
they can start to see it as an opportunity for collaboration.
Yeah, or just genuine connection.
Or just genuine connection, yeah.
And this brings us to a key takeaway from this deep dive.
Okay.
You know, understanding the Enneagram.
Yeah.
It's not about putting people in boxes or using it as an excuse for bad behavior.
Right.
It's about using this knowledge to grow.
Yeah.
To develop compassion for ourselves and others.
Yeah.
And to, navigate the complexity of human relationships.
Yeah. With more understanding.
Exactly.
Like Will said.
And speaking of understanding,
Yeah.
I want to touch on Schopenhauer's rejection of mainstream philosophical thought.
Yeah, I mean, he really seemed to have a disdain for anything that he considered to be superficial or unoriginal.
That's true. He was very critical of the popular philosophies of his time, especially Hegel, calling them shallow and pretentious.
Didn't he once say that reading Hegel was like wading through a sea of slime?
He did, in fact.
I mean, that's pretty harsh.
Yeah, well...
But this aversion to mediocrity
yeah.
is a real hallmark of the sexual four, right?
And absolutely.
It's like they're constantly searching for something deeper, more authentic,
yeah,
that resonates with their sense of self.
And it's not just about being different for the sake of being different.
Right.
It's about finding things that feel true to who they are.
Yeah, even if those things are a little unconventional.
Right.
Or dark.
Yeah.
Even.
And this brings us back to Schopenhauer's philosophy. Right. He didn't shy away from the bleak realities of life.
Right.
He embraced them, he explored them, and I think ultimately he found a kind of beauty in them,
Yeah. It's like he's saying, yes, life is full of suffering.
Yeah.
But that suffering is part of what makes us human.
Right.
And within that suffering, we can find meaning,
Yeah.
purpose, connection.
I think that's a really beautiful way to summarize his perspective. And I think it speaks to the power of the Enneagram to help us understand not just individuals, but the human condition as a whole.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm left with, this sense of awe for Schopenhauer's intellect.
Yeah.
And a new appreciation for the sexual four personality.
I'm glad to hear that. And as we head into our final segment, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
Could Schopenhauer's unique perspective on life, his ability to find meaning in suffering, have stemmed, in part, from those very sensitivities and struggles that define the sexual four personality?
It really makes you think, maybe those struggles gave him a viewpoint on the human condition.
Yeah.
That someone else wouldn't have had.
It's possible, Our experiences shape how we see the world, right?
Yeah.
And the sexual four sensitivity to suffering might have given Schopenhauer that unique insight
Into the nature of desire.
Exactly.
And I guess how limited human happiness can be.
Right.
It makes me think about something you mentioned earlier about the sexual four's capacity for empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, even though Schopenhauer could be kind of prickly and withdrawn,
Yeah.
His philosophy still reveals this deep understanding of the human heart.
It does.
And its yearning for connection.
Yeah, it's that paradoxical nature of the
Yeah.
sexual four. Right. They can swing between, these intense emotions.
Yeah.
The longing for connection and then the fear of rejection. And all this inner turmoil often comes out in their creative work.
So it's like his philosophy is both a reflection of his own struggles and also a testament to his ability to empathize with the human experience.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes him so enduring. Even though his philosophy can be, as we said, a little challenging, a little pessimistic, it resonates because it speaks to something deep within us, about desire, suffering.
Just search for something more.
That search for something more.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, yes, life is hard, but it's also beautiful and profound. And within that, that complexity, we can find these moments of grace.
Connection.
Transcendence.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it highlights the importance of really embracing
our own complexities.
Yeah, all those parts of ourselves.
Even the parts that are difficult.
Yeah, because within that, that's where we might find our own perspective.
Exactly.
That allows us to connect with other people in a meaningful way.
And contribute something new to the conversation.
And the Enneagram can really be such a valuable tool in that process of self-discovery.
It helps us understand ourselves,
Yeah.
our patterns,
Yeah.
our motivations, our strengths.
And appreciate the diversity of human experience.
Just like a map to understand ourselves and others.
Yeah, it's like a guide to navigate all the
complexities.
Yeah, the complexities of relationships and find compassion.
Compassion.
For the full spectrum of human emotion and experience.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive into Schopenhauer and the sexual four, I hope you're leaving with some curiosity about the Enneagram and its potential to, really help us understand the human condition.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring the Enneagram and see how it might apply to your own life.
Your own experiences.
The lives of those around you.
Who knows, you might learn something new.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep questioning.